the Amazing Women Speak podcast, inspiring and motivating every Black woman to own, honor, and execute her amazing, individually and collectively, as it was established at birth.
Good evening, and happy Sunday. I am Crystal L. Gunn, and welcome to another episode of Amazing Women Speak. Thank you for tuning in again. For all of you who have been riding with us these past seasons, thank you. For those who are new here, I think you will find these conversations inspiring and uplifting, so stick around. I guarantee you will like it. But while you are getting settled in for the show, hit the share button. Share Amazing Women Speak so your friends and followers can get in on this conversation. And this conversation of adversity, adversity. And it can feel overwhelming, but it holds this incredible power to teach us lessons we may not have learned otherwise. It shapes our character, it clarifies our purpose, and it helps us discover strengths we did not know we had. And I'm sure if you look back over your life and think about some of the adversity you've encountered, I am sure you are stronger and wiser because of it. So let's talk about it, turning adversity into strength. But before we do that, you know the drill. I got to welcome my BFF, Michele, to the podcast. Thank you, ma'am, for joining us.
Hello. Absolutely. Best place to be on a Sunday evening.
Especially after the 14th?
The 14th.
14th annual holiday brunch at your house. It was fantastic yesterday. Thank
Still
you.
on here trying to recover. I'm just saying.
It was a day to recover from. It was good, though. It was good.
Absolutely. So this is a really timely conversation, especially as folks get into the holidays and are trying to balance the things that make sense, don't make sense, how to come to peace with things, and how to handle everything that tends to be thrown at Black women, I don't know, for whatever reason, at an amplified level during this time of year. Adversity seems to be the soup du jour. And so to be able to have a conversation as we begin to wind down this calendar year, what a way to think about how we turn our adversities into strength. And while we could have this conversation, it's always more amazing when we bring in folks who want to lift up their voice, share their story. Let tonight be no different. Marie, please come in and introduce yourself.
Hello. My name is Maria Franklin. I'm the Executive Director of Life Leaders. I'm a lifelong Detroiter. I am excited to be here. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Love to learn more about you as we will, as this conversation unfolds, learn about Life Leaders, how you landed yourself in that path. We look forward to learning more about that story. As always, we invite you, our listeners, whatever platform you are joining us from, to be a part of this conversation. Drop your questions, your comments in the chat. It's always a fun ride when you go along with us by utilizing your voice. Let tonight be no different. I call this the fastest hour of the day because the conversation gets deep, it gets good. So we don't have time for shallow water. So let's just dive in, because before we know it, we will be at the top of the hour. So Maria, when you think about adversity, when did you recognize that it was having an impact on the way that you were showing up and keeping you from absolutely being your best self?
You know what? I think when did it keep me from being my best self? The hardest thing I ever went through, and something I've not actually spoken about publicly until today, actually, this will be the debut, was when I went through my divorce after 23 years of being in a relationship with someone who I thought I would be with for the rest of my life. And prior to that, and I guess going through that, I had a lot of time for reflection in it. And that's when I realized that I had experienced a lot of adversity up until that point. But you know how you can stack things on a table, and a table is meant to withhold so much pressure. And that, I think that was the last thing that my table could hold. And I was like, you know what? A lot. So yeah, that was it for me. So that was about a year ago, you know, roughly, when I realized that.
So first, thank you for sharing that part of your story. One of the things that we always pay attention to is when women share their overcome story. Those folks that are listening, like, okay, I want to know how you got there, right? Like, it sounds like everything's going good, you really made it through, but really unpacking the how for folks so that they can build their own toolkits for getting over things, specifically tonight, adversity. So thank you for opening the door to what can be a difficult conversation, recognizing that something is happening to you, around you. And I love the analogy of using a table that really is designed to support and hold a lot. And so we continue to pile on to a thing, whatever that table is in your life, without recognizing, it can no longer hold anymore. And so when you recognize that, right, like I'm facing some adversities that I did not plan for, what were some of those first steps that you took to begin to say, I've got to make a change?
So I took time to be quiet and be still,
Mm.
to think, reflect, and think about who I was in any given moment and who I wanted to be in my future. And so I think we can get stuck in thinking about what happened to us or what experience we had. And it can cause us to be stagnant or paralyzed, or we can look at it, learn from it, and use that experience and that experience gained from the thing, and use it to be better and to move forward with a greater sense of resilience and strength. And so that's what I did. And there was meditation involved, there was prayer involved, there was exercise involved, there was ice cream involved.
All
All
the
of
things.
And then taking time to rest.
Mm.
I think that was really, really important for me, because, initially, I would just try to busy myself in
Right.
any sense of adversity all throughout my life. I think I just tend to just try to push through and don't feel and don't
Right.
experience the hard stuff. But in order to truly heal, what I found was most helpful for me was to actually take some time to rest.
Thank you for lifting it up, right? Because we have been socialized to just keep pushing, right? Like bury the thing down by adding more to it when it's not solving nor making us better for the thing that we ultimately know that we deserve. We just got to figure out how to get there. Rest is so critical and the opposite to the ways in which we've been socialized. So thank you for that.
Yeah, of course.
So you and I had a conversation, I don't know, not too long ago. Um, and you rested, you did the thing, but then you really did turn adversity into strength because you've done a lot in this past year.
Hmm.
How much of it was the strength that has been built up, not just from the divorce, but all of the other adversity? And how much was, well, now I got to keep pushing forward and I have to do more? Because I think sometimes we feel like, okay, well, we've gotten here. Now we just have to do more and we keep piling stuff on. So, where was the balance?
I think uh, for me, because I did, I took on a new role in a new organization that was challenging, and it was just took me outside of my comfort zone even more so, right? But I had two choices. It was to lay down and fail or whatever you want to call it, or it was to push through and fight, and not give up. And that's what I just chose to do. And I chose to see the bright side of every situation that I could. I chose to not dwell on um, what the hard moments, and instead I chose to keep moving forward one step at a time, right? And try not to look at everything that in its total in so granularly, but look more like a 50-foot view, taking a step back, because it is a lot, right? It seems like a lot because it is a lot, and you can't do but you can't do everything at once, right? Just like you can't be everything for everybody at the same time. But compartmentalizing, prioritizing, and taking um, the challenges one step at a time. I don't know. That's how I got through it.
Right. Like, so I think about, be it a relationship, be it a job, be it a friendship, right? Like, we give a part of ourselves to that thing, right? And so then to come out and the job ends, the relationship ends, the friendship ends, and there's this piece of you that you gave away that you have to find again to make yourself whole, in a sense, right? When those relationships, when that job, when it really does matter, you're pouring yourself in, and then you've got to go on this journey of self-discovery, right? Like, and oftentimes we'll discover that thing that we thought we lost was not ours anyway, and that this rebuild of this 2.0 is really allowing you to redefine for yourself, not by somebody else's standard of what I'm supposed to do on this job, or what a friend needs, or what this man, significant other, is expecting of me, that we get to define for ourselves what Maria, what Michele, what Crystal is going to look like in this next chapter. What was some of that for you?
Yeah. So one thing you said is that you give away a part of yourself, right? And have to rediscover. I mean, for me, it was that, and it was recognizing that I didn't even know all of who I was to begin with.
Right.
So it is a discovery in a number of different ways. And it's actually quite beautiful to get to know self, and to know that you can and you will, with others or without, right? So that alone for me was very, very empowering. And it's been a beautiful journey to own my amazing, which is quite fitting for this because that was something I just never did really. It was more all of my energy and attention was focused outward to everybody else, to uplift what everybody else was doing. It was never about me and what I was capable of. And so there was a sense of uh, not knowing, right? And the confidence, the self-confidence wasn't there. But in this new,
Right.
this new season, this evolution of myself, the confidence is coming forward full force. And, I think that it's giving me the ability to show up for others in an even greater way than I before. So, yeah.
I love that. So, Chris, I want to invite you into this conversation with a little bit of a twist, right? You created some adversities for yourself that you, right? Like, did you become stronger because of, right? Like, you made an active decision to walk away from a career without all of the answers. That's adversity, right? Like self-imposed. Talk to us about the why of that and the strength that you continue to grow into and gain because of it.
So I was in this, I didn't hate my career, right? But I was in this place where you've seen the post that said, your calling will keep calling until you answer.
Mm-hmm.
And that's literally what it was. It was the calling kept calling. And I would shy away from it. Nah, I'm going to keep this job. I'm going to do this thing this way, right? Because it's the easy way and I get to pay some bills. But the calling kept calling. And it was calling so loud that it started to make the career miserable,
Mm.
right? And so it was like, okay, you're not paying attention to the signs, right? You're not paying attention to the signs. And we always ask for these signs. God, send me a sign. Okay, well, how many do you need to get before you decide to do what I tell you to do? And so things just kept getting worse. It was fire after fire. We put one fire out, it would be another fire. We put another one out. And every time the fire was bigger than the last. And the fires were making me ill. So that was another type of adversity, the stress and all of that was going along when all I needed to do was become free and walk in my purpose. And of course, it wasn't that easy, but yeah, it was either you stay here and be miserable, or you walk in your purpose and try to figure it out because it can't be any more miserable than this.
Mm.
Right? It can't be any more miserable than this. And I've handled miserable. Okay, I've done that. Now what happens if it's not miserable? What happens if it is a thing? So, yeah, I think it literally was, yeah, what I'm now thinking of how insane it actually is. Leaving one adversity and walking into another, the unknown, and I think the unknown was the adversity, but there's that thing called faith. And I
Right.
said,
Yeah.
okay, because literally the day that I just decided to quit, and I was like, okay, you know what? I quit. And then I was like, okay, wait, God, can I quit? But the peace was so just instant and that I was giggling. And I was like, okay, well, any adversity that I face going forward, not thinking in terms of adversity, but anything that I would face going forward has to be better than what I'm leaving. And
But
I
right,
think
like so many times we get stuck in it, like it's uncomfortable. But the uncertainty of what's on the other side, like there's a fear that will paralyze folks from making a decision, right? Like not only did you walk away from an income, you walked away from benefits. You walk right, like that kind of thing will make folks stay in a place,
for
right?
sure.
Two-person income, that will make folks stay in a marriage. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Thinking that somebody's writing for you will make you stay in a friendship. Like all of those things will make you stay somewhere that may not be fully serving you because of the comforts that we think that it's providing us. And we'll disguise the discomforts into something that, no, this is working for me. And we stay in adversarial positions
For too long.
for too long,
Yeah.
because of that fear.
Yeah.
And you said, yep, it wasn't that easy, right? But like our listeners need to hear, and I did it anyway,
And
right?
I
Like
did it anyway.
23 plus years, Maria, that's a long time,
That's a long time.
right? And I did it anyway.
I think
And so,
And survived. Because I think that's a huge piece too. I did it and I survived it.
I think fear sometimes masquerades as comfort.
Oh, I love that.
It's like, okay, this is comfortable, but that's because you're afraid of the unknown. And
mhm.
so, but the reality is that job wasn't the only. It wasn't comfortable. It wasn't your best option. There are many other options to choose from. You're resilient and strong enough to walk into a new thing and thrive in it, right? It's scary to do new things and take on new challenges. But it's rewarding when you do.
And let's do an Amazing Women Speak disclaimer. I'm not telling anybody to do what I did. I am not telling anyone to do that. That was in what, 2022? Yeah, March of 2022. Um, has it been easy? Absolutely not. Would I change a thing? Absolutely not. Like I still would have, it's not like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. No, I should have. Like, you know what I mean? And so it's being reassured in that, but also, I don't know, I think every bit of the adversity, every change, every loss, every challenge, you mentioned it earlier, the beauty of getting to know self. So it's not only, okay, I quit this job and now I'm building these businesses, and I'm impacting these people, but it's also been a whole nother journey of Crystal getting to know Crystal deeper, which is also scary.
Right. Right.
And I think it's being in tune with self. You said that this was something that was nagging at you for a long time. And so ignoring that feeling or that intuition, versus really leaning into, people know when something's not right.
Yeah.
And so to lean into that intuition, with intentionality, thinking of a solution, being creative with a plan, and finding a balance between execution and rest, right? Execution of thing and rest. To me, that is
I'm like, there's a balance between that, because where is that? Like, I'm still working on it.
I think, sometimes for me, I would just literally stop and smell the roses anytime I pass them. Like even little things like that. Not figuratively, but literally.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like simple pleasures, simple moments of just stopping and being present, can be part of resting.
Yeah. So when you find yourself dealing with adversity and you need to build strength to come out of that, how do you also simultaneously build strength that prepares you for other adversities that are coming, right? Like so that we stop having to go fire to fire. How what are the things that we do, we think about, we plan for that says I'm stronger for this situation that I got through, and the next thing that comes at me, I'm going to be better prepared, right? As opposed to I got through that one and we
You said better prepared for the next thing that comes at me. Yeah, no, that's not a thing. It's not a thing. And I think we always think that and this is me. I think I can be prepared. But if I spend too much time thinking about the thing that can come, then I do miss out on the thing that's happening right now. So knowing that if you live long enough, another thing is gonna come, like it's gonna come. But I always have to say,
absolutely.
God got me like he had me the last time, the time before that, and the time before that. And a lot of those times I've caused myself. But anyway, I trust in that and say, okay, well, he's going to have to come through again, because the promises that he made to me, I'm telling you to do this thing. Okay, then I can either sit here and say, what's going to happen? Or what if this doesn't happen? Or what if I don't meet this deadline? And I learned from you, change the deadline. Don't stress yourself out. Who said you had to do it by then? And just keep my head down. And then I look back and I'm like, oh, okay, well, I've climbed, these 10 steps as I just keep walking the thing. And when I'm not worried about that next piece of adversity, even though I know something is going to show up, it doesn't show up like this great big,
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the tools that we accumulate over the course of our lives are reusable tools.
Sure.
Um, just someone once told me that the most successful people in life reflect often. And so reflection on things that went right, how did you do it? Reflection on things that went wrong, how did you respond to it?
Mhm.
So then when the unexpected happens, um, you lean on your experiences and you lean on your village, quite honestly. I think it's helpful, and I'm a strong proponent. I think the two of you are as well, as besties, to have a trusted person that is in your corner, that's honest with you, and that encourages you and allows you to see yourself in the best parts of you, even when you can't see it yourself, and remind you of who you are. you know, and walk with you. And God is the ultimate friend to go on that journey with, as well. But I like to lean on the spiritual side, and I also have a trusted friend who helped me get through some of the darkest, hardest times and reminded me who I was.
Yeah. I want to sit in that space around reflection for a moment, having to be intentional, right? Because we'll get so busy being busy, right? Like that we forget the power of reflection and understanding. Like, I do have the tools and the resources to be able to get this if I pull from, right? Like that was not just a temporary fix. It has made me a stronger individual. And I need to remember that and give myself credit for the things that I came through and that they are strengthening me for the journey. And that strength comes in the form of my faith, it comes in the form of my village. We have to be intentional, like literally carving time out. Like we would schedule everything else, that moment of reflection and holding myself accountable to doing that so I can discover, right? Like the most dangerous person in this country is a Black woman with a voice.
Mhm.
And we don't acknowledge. And so we bury and we try to bury it. We try to bury one another and we allow the world to bury us, that we don't discover. We don't awaken to that strength that we truly do have, because we are a force to be reckoned with when we find our strength. And so they would rather keep us busy
Mhm.
than allowing us that moment to reflect in a really deep way that allows us to really grow and find voice, that we really do recognize that we have strength for whatever the adversity is that is coming, not if, when it does come. So thank you for lifting that up and really making us remember the importance of doing that reflection. And if you don't know how, what are some things that we can do for folks that are listening to begin to do that reflection piece?
Yeah, I will put it on my calendar on Fridays, block out an hour or two,
Right.
and just sit and be quiet and think. What did I want? What was I trying to accomplish for this week? Did I accomplish it? What happened over the course of the past year? Um, what in all of the happenings, what were the things that I can elevate that made me stronger? Where were the pitfalls? Who were the people in my life who were a source of strength, and who uh, were those people who drained me? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Time am I spending with each of those individuals? And so you can start to be intentional about who you spend your time with, how much time you're spending with them, what how much time are you spending on your actual goals, and are you reaching them, right? And so when you find, man, I did reach my goals because you were intentional about spending time to accomplish that. Or if you didn't, what was taking up your time that stopped you from achieving what it is that you want to achieve. And so those are just a couple of the ways that I think about reflection. And I'll look back as far as 5 years ago, 10 years ago. I've even been reflecting back on my childhood lately. Like there's and how does that manifest and how I show up today with people and in situations and at work um and yeah, I don't know if that answers the question, but those are some
It does. It
yeah.
does. Again, it's just women who are struggling trying to find their way tend to lean into our conversations on Sundays because they get to hear, right? Like, one, I'm not alone. Two, my situation is not so unique that I can't hear from these women who have figured it out to some degree and understanding we're all still on our journey, right? Like, we still got our crap and we still have adversities that we're trying to get through. So to really just slow down and say, and this is what I did, right? Like, so pick up and try something on that will shake up your current way of thinking about things that you may discover, oh yeah, I can do this one. This is something that's easy enough for me to try on, and maybe able to find some small wins that equal to some victories in this journey. So yeah, absolutely, it does answer the question.
Yeah, and I think even when I think about this last year in particular, just going and going and going and when you don't even stop sometimes, when you finally do stop and look back, for me, I was I had to take a moment to celebrate what I had accomplished in the year. I was in awe of it. I was just like, wow, set these goals and then sometimes you're like, I don't know how I'm going to do it or if I'm going to do it. And to look back in those instances when you do it, to not reflect and stop and celebrate yourself and think about how did you achieve that is a crime. Like it's a disservice to self to not celebrate.
100%.
Yeah, so
I always say you have to celebrate the small wins. Oftentimes people will wait. They have this big goal, but to get to this big goal and to win at that big goal, there were all of these smaller goals in before that. And you have to take time to celebrate each one of those as well. Because when you do that, it sets off a frequency almost that it brings about more things to celebrate. And then you reach that next goal quicker, and which gets you to that to that major goal. But we deserve that atta girl every single day. It's like, yeah, give
Mhm.
yourself a pat on the back. We just go from one thing to the next, from one thing to the next. It's like, write them down. It's the gratitude in, okay, I accomplished this thing. I just made it today. You know what? I didn't make the goal that I had to do today. I didn't finish my to-do list. It's 5 things on it, but I got 3 done. Well, that's huge, especially if there were some fires that you had to put out that you couldn't get it. But I don't know, it's probably part of the conditioning where it's easier to tear ourselves down for what we didn't do than to celebrate the things that we actually do.
Yeah, it's hard. Like, it is absolute, and it is. It's that social conditioning that will prevent us from celebrating and turning whatever loss into a win, right? Like, because there is the thing. I tried it, right? Like, that's a victory.
It
That's a
is.
victory. It's those really small things that we don't really can help build our muscle to really being able to recognize that we are stronger than we realize and have the ability to do the thing if we just started counting the things that we are doing along the way to be able to get us there. Yeah, I like that.
There's this huge thing that I had started doing years ago, and I stopped, and I just recently started doing it again. And I have this gratitude box, and I have these little, I don't know, paper squares, and every day I take out 3 of those squares and I write something on it that I'm grateful for. It might be the beautiful sunset, but it's 3 things. And then I make sure that I date it. And the beauty of it is, one, you're being intentional about what you're grateful for in that day. But then also, if you're having a day or if you're having a moment when you feel off, I can go and I can pick that box up and I can just pull out a handful of those things and just start reading back and remembering, oh, this happened on this day. I was driving and it really looked like I was driving into the sun, right? And so, again, just changing the frequency, the vibration of you in order to get you up to be able to do the next thing. Gratitude is a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful thing to help us get to that next level.
Yeah, it definitely will help you build strength.
For sure.
We're dealing with a lot with this incoming election around the work that I do, right? Like diversity, equity, and
You
inclusion
are.
work is under attack, right?
Mhm.
And one of our partners that we work with, and this has just really stuck with me in a way of thinking about other things in my life. And he said, if it's going away, we might as well do all of the things anyway, right? If this thing is not, here is our golden opportunity, right? Like if we didn't operate in a space of fear, what would we do?
Mm-hmm.
Well, hell, let's do those things because, right? What do we have to lose if that really is the game that's about to be played? And so I'm like thinking, if I have tried that approach in some other spaces, right? Like we've had this conversation. Like if fear wasn't a factor, what would you do? Well, do that thing anyway, right? And you might discover. And even if it goes wrong, you've learned something, you've gained a new strength because you tried something that you allow fear to hold you from in the first place. And so I'm really trying to be intentional about that practice in different areas in my life in dealing with adversity to think, what do I have to lose?
Nothing. And if it goes wrong the first time, you've learned something so that it doesn't go wrong the second time.
At least not the same way, right? Like
Exactly,
even
not the
that is
same way.
still a new
Yeah,
learning.
exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think that points to vulnerability as strength, right? Because you're doing something regardless of what might happen. That's being vulnerable. And but it also takes strength to do those things and to not give in to fear. And what do you have to gain from it? Right. So when we think about that, that's so powerful and a really like a driving force for us to do those things that we might be afraid to do.
So tell us about your journey that led you to ED at Life Leaders. Tell us about Life Leaders and what have you learned since stepping into that?
So my journey started when I was a teenager. My father passed away from a heart attack. He was 40 years old. I decided to go into nutrition and dietetics because of that, because I was reflecting. Even then, I've always been not knowing it, but I've always been like a thinker and reflecting on what I see around me, society, right? What's taking on in terms of social norms and everything as well. But I saw that in the neighborhood I grew up in Detroit, with which I found was not unique to Detroit, but this is the dynamic across our country and across our world. Um, in the places where I live, which were predominantly neighborhoods of color, there was high incidence of, well, I didn't know it then, but I did know, looking at my friends and family members, that there is high incidence of disease, right? Of heart disease, cancer, diabetes, obesity. And I knew when I walked into a grocery store, first thing I saw in the hood where I lived was um, Kool-Aid, ramen noodles, and whatever, sugary cereals.
Mhm.
And when I walked into a grocery store in the neighborhood where my aunt lived in the suburbs, the first thing I saw was flowers and the most vegetables you could ever want to eat. And I ended up becoming a registered dietitian because of that, because I thought, if I could teach people to eat well and nourish their bodies well, then that would help them to live longer, and that would help families to stay together longer. Right.
Mhm.
So when I think back to how can I turn this adversity of my father passing into a strength and something that empowers my community, that's what really drove me to go into that field. And I ended up teaching in 13 high schools throughout the city of Detroit for over 10 years through Wayne State University, Research University. And I again was learning a lot about the inequities that exist in our society, the social determinants of health, how your life expectancy is dictated by the zip codes you live in, and so you know, by 10 years you can give or take 10 years of and add it to or take it away from your life depending on where you live. And it's in our
Maria, say that again, right? Like I want that to sit with folks.
yeah, so 10 years of your life, give or take, depending on where you live. On those of us who live in lower socioeconomic communities, our lives are shortened by 10 years. This is what the data tells us. And those that have higher socioeconomic status, that live in communities where they're not as stressed financially and just overall, maybe I don't know if they have healthier relationships, but they live 10 years longer than us on average. And so yeah, it's crazy, right? But
Right.
and the only way I was able to go into those schools, the qualification was that they had to have at least 50% or more of the young people that were qualified for free or reduced lunch, so at or below the poverty level, essentially. And it was the case for over 10 years. It was actually closer to 80% of the youth in the schools that I served in that met that qualification, and it wasn't changing. And you know, I was so busy trying to help people build a perfect plate, teach them how, and I realized that they were not in a position to build a perfect plate. They were looking for
Mm,
a plate. And so I thought, how can I do more
wow.
for young people to help position them to be able and to know to be economically empowered with the skill set, with the knowledge, with the relationships, with the opportunities, so that they can live the type of life um, that you know where they can do things like that, where they can be choosy about what they put into their bodies. Um and I, you know, I just thought our community deserves that. And so I actually went back to school and got my MBA, and I was studying abroad. And I was in Brazil, and that's where I learned. And it's kind of been an evolution of just, you know, my eyes been opening here and there all over, you know, the last 15, 20 years. But um, I was there. We learned about the history of the country and how slavery started there before it started here in America, how more people were enslaved there than there were here in America. It ended there later than it ended here. And when I went there for study abroad with my class, I was expecting to see a lot of people of color, a lot of Black people. And I did see them. But when we went into executive rooms of some of these corporate spaces, I didn't see not one person of color in any of those rooms,
Hmm.
with the exception of those that were bringing or you know bringing or that were managing the food service or the general
Right.
services. And I asked my professor where all the Black people were, and he said it was still a problem. And that's when it really hit me. And I was like, and that's when I knew it wasn't just a problem of my family of origin that I was, you know, ashamed of for so long, thinking that we had done something wrong or that we had been lazy or that
Right.
there was something that we did not do. It wasn't just my community, my neighborhood. It wasn't just my city or my state. It or even my country.
Mhm.
It's a whole world,
Global.
right? And I
Right.
could see it up close and personal, and I could never unsee it. And I just, I said, if I can create exposures, executive level exposures for young people, that's what I would love to do. And that's what I do at Life Leaders. You know, as the head of this organization, I'm intentional about creating spaces and opportunities for young people to see people who look like them in positions of leadership, and also to be empowered. So that they can see themselves in that space and see themselves in a different light, just in general, in terms of how they show up in their community and how they, you know, position themselves and use their own power that they have, you know, to be the best that they can be for themselves and others.
I love that. I love
Mhm.
that. Thank you for sharing that. It's when you get an opportunity to see something at a global level, it really helps you get back down to that granular, right? Like, because we look at our families with this certain lens, and then when you start to pull up and you recognize, right, like we're not talking about isolation, we are talking about a global issue, right? And then if you circle this thing all the way back down to the conversation that we're having, how we think about adversity and how we stay in it because we lack the tools, the resources, the knowledge to be able to do something about it. And the importance of surrounding yourselves with folks who are making room, right? Like it is important. One of the things to also think about food insecurities and to think about the inequities, you are also saying, I am challenging myself to think about how do I allow other folks that look like me to recognize that folks can sit in these ED seats, they can sit in these CEO seats. Like that's important for me to know. Um, and to pay attention to how I show up and to give back so that as folks are thinking about how do I overcome, I see somebody who has really overcome in a way that I did not think possible. So thank you for sharing that and for that part of the commitment that you have to creating spaces for other Black and Brown folks to have opportunities that they didn't think that were possible for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think my lens is a little bit different being a person of mixed ethnicity too, because while my family that I align with most naturally is African American, I also recognize the humanity of people
Mm-hmm.
in terms of how people show up and what's their spirit like, what is their heart like, and that's what I really look at when I'm determining if I want to be in communion with someone, and to what degree. And it also made me think, and then you talk about societal norms, um how people, or our society is built. It goes even beyond a racial divide to a capitalistic divide in terms of like what are we really like, I guess where is the disconnect really, right? Is it across skin tones, or is it because of like financial, is it more of a financial situation or thing for people who are ultra power, or finance, or um, people who have higher wealth in this world. And I think that is something that I try to lift up as well, while also recognizing that there's still a need for diversity, equity, inclusion to create um, more equal playing field when it comes, because the reality is what the reality is. But I always like to keep sight of um, where the true fight is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so from that standpoint, I just really like to lift up that people are taught, right? And nobody is born uh, just creating an unequal or born to think that they're better or worse or anything of that nature. But we can also, just as people are taught, we can unlearn and we can relearn in a way that helps us to be able to commune together peacefully and with equality and with fairness and with justness and with just a bold sense of love for people in general.
Yeah, I had a mentor early in my work, right? Like when I got into this and I was watching all of the injustices in this world, and it felt like it was always happening to Black people, right? And so um, a mentor said to me, always remember that race is a part of everything and all of nothing, right? Like we're not out here to play the oppression Olympics because nobody wants gold in being oppressed, right?
Right.
And so it's not an either or, it's the both and. And so recognizing that allowed me to think about the humanity of all folks, right? Because not all Black and brown folks are great, nor all Black and brown folks horrible, right? Like, so it's that both and approach, and really recognizing, right, like that we all, regardless of our skin tone, do face some adversities. And being Black in this country, being a BIPOC person in this country, makes that adversity even more challenging because of the lack of resources and access we get to wealth, that we get to health, that we get to, right, like food in our own communities, right? And so having to learn that we have rights and that we should have access to those things is a part of that conversation that helps us think about the humanity and also recognizing the other inequities that are at play in these conversations. And somehow this conversation took a turn, right? Like really, and it's that domino. Like it's hard to talk about adversity and talk about your stories and not think about those things of who I am and how I show up in this world, and that conversation not take this natural turn, and to understanding what it means to get access to when you walked into rooms and like, okay, nobody else in here looks like me. Why is that? And what responsibility do I have to the generations to come to help change that?
Yeah, I mean, that was a huge part of the adversity in that particular area of my life, that I had to overcome and draw strength from.
Yeah.
So,
Healing and self-discovery, right? Like that is that's our individual, I think, purpose for ourselves, not the thing that we do out in the community, but healing and self-discovery. So Maria, this last year has been an interesting one for you. What's one thing that you learned that you were almost shocked to learn about yourself yeah.
I was shocked to learn how strong I am. I mean, I really was, because there were moments when I was not sure that I would get through it. There were moments when I felt paralyzed, and I had to really talk to myself because after laying in bed for 6 hours, you gotta get up, you know? You gotta get up and you gotta get out, move, you gotta push forward. And I questioned, do I belong in this space? Am I able to do it? Am I going to be able to do what I'm trying to do and what I said I would do? And it's the end of the year and I have done it. It's all the things. And so, there's definitely a confidence that comes with that. Because it hasn't happened just once under the conditions, that were a little bit easier. I guess I wouldn't even say easier. I mean, it's different. Yeah. But I've done this now 2 or 3 times. And so at this point, it's not a fluke.
Right.
Okay. Like this is really, I'm here for a reason, and the gift is there, and and so just operating in it. So yeah.
And I'm glad you recognize it, because I think that's part of that conditioning that we constantly question ourselves. Like I've done this a few times now. It's not a fluke. I absolutely belong here. I don't believe that others question their whether or not they belong. And oftentimes some of them don't, in the positions that they have. But I'm glad that you recognize that you definitely not only belong in this space, but that you own the space as well. That's huge.
Yeah, absolutely.
So as you've been on this road, as I said, fastest hour of your day, we begin to wrap this conversation. What's next? You recognize, right? Like you've gone through some really challenging stuff, right? And even thinking about the loss of your father, how that redefined your purpose, right? Like you were clear that you needed to do something to change the conversation, to change the narrative. Then you go through this other life altering, right? Like you stood in a space and said, I do, and thought that meant forever. And then you come out of that. And so you recognize, yeah, oh, yeah, I'm built for this. What's next?
Um, I think I set some lofty goals for the growth of life leaders as an organization. Um, I've been fortunate to have a lot of support from some really amazing women and some really amazing men. But I really uplift my sisters because it's a different kind of uh, strength that comes from those relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And um, when you find a good group of sisters that are going to uplift you up, just as when me and Crystal connected a little bit ago, um, I think that's the most valuable and precious asset, that I'm very grateful for. But I think, um, I've just gone through this Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses program, and you know just it's prepared me in a way to take on the big lofty goals of growing an organization, positioning it to be sustainable and have significant impact in the community for decades to come. And so that is what's ahead of me in the area of life leaders in particular. um, I'll continue to pursue and build on my real estate endeavors, real estate investing and development, and whatever else God has in store for me, because sometimes things come up and I didn't anticipate it, but it's just a matter
Right.
of recognizing the opportunity and saying yes to it. And so I'm prepared for the unexpected, to be able to say yes and walk through those doors when the time comes.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your story with us. Thank you for allowing us to see your vulnerability and hear about the strength that you've gained, the knowledge that you've obtained, that you learned who you were, and your ability to stand strong in who you are and in your purpose. Thank you. I'm this platform. I say it every week. It really does create space for women to hear, even for themselves, that they have a story to tell, that that story has impact, not only on the other women listening, but for themselves as well, right? Like just to be in space where you get to say for the first time, or you get to say it out loud and put it in the universe. This platform has a way of doing that. And I'm grateful to be able to be in community with strong women who recognize that a path to strength is being vulnerable and in sharing their story. So thank you for that, Maria. One more time, somebody has been made better because they understand that adversity, it's going to happen. And it does not mean that you aren't able to overcome and become even better than you thought you could be. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to come and share this platform with both of you, amazing women, and to hopefully be inspiration for someone who's listening, regardless of what challenge they may be facing. And I just will encourage them to not, and caution against comparison. Um,
Mhm.
their adversity might not be like my adversity or like either of your adversity, but adversity is anything that takes you outside your comfort zone, is anything that pushes you a little bit harder than you've ever been pushed before. And if it feels hard for you, uncomfortable and challenging, then the tools I think that we lifted up during this podcast are going to help you to get through it. So thank you for creating this space for me to be here as well.
Love it, love it, love it. Thank you so much, Maria. You're dynamic. You're amazing. You're doing the thing, and I can't wait December of 2025 to see all that you accomplish with life leaders and the real estate and all of that you have. a very, very bright future ahead of you, and the impact that you are having is truly phenomenal. So I definitely thank you for that. Thank you for your honesty. Thank you for your vulnerability. Thank you for sharing all of that with us. For everybody that's listening, just remember, my mother teaches Bible study, and one of the things that she always says when she's talking about the scripture, and she'll say, well, how did you, like, how did you read it? How did you take it? And I think when we start to look at failing and adversity, not as a bad thing, but as a stepping stone to our greatness, it changes the trajectory of our life. We don't stay in that failure. Um, we move forward quicker, I believe, and we learn faster. And so I just think it's a really great thing when we can see it for what it truly is. I remember saying, I don't remember who the actor is, and he was like, you ask God for patience. Well, he's just not going to give you patience. He's going to put you in a situation to learn patience.
Absolutely.
Right. And so that's what I believe too, that adversity and failing is. So again, thank you. Thank you so much for that. And one of the things that you lifted up, which I want to take a moment to also speak on here, are your tribe. We talk about that often, and the people around you. I say it all the time. If the people around you don't inspire you just by what they do on a day-to-day basis, you need new people around you. I have a best friend who, you know, just inspires me by what she does every single day. And so get you some people like that around you always. So thank you, Michele, for being as dope as you are and being my best friend. I am Crystal L. Gunn. I am a Black woman, and I absolutely, positively own my amazing.
And as you should. Crystal, again, I don't say it because it becomes a part of the closing. I say it because everybody that hears and joins us needs to be reminded what this platform is designed to do. And because you remain obedient to the call that God has placed on your life, you created a space where we celebrate the women that come on and tell their stories, and we get stronger as a collective because of your obedience. So I thank you for that, because you continue to bless women who have yet to physically be in a space with you. This platform is reaching folks. You've invited folks from across this world to come in. And so this global reach that you talk about is real. And so I thank you for that, because somebody is healing because of your vision, because you turned a self-imposed adversity into a gift and a blessing, especially to Black women. So I thank you. I thank you for asking me, because I get to be in this space with you every week, and I get to grow and learn from amazing women like Maria. So I thank you for asking, because this is a space that I too get to grow and acknowledge that I am, without apology, a Black woman who owns their amazing. Maria.
I just want to thank you both, because I look at you in the spirit of gratitude and and thankfulness as just strong pillars, and just what an example for me. I'm grateful to be in your presence, to be able to share in conversation with you, Crystal. I'm thankful for you seeing me, and pushing me the way you do, and having me to think differently and think outside the box a little bit. And we know all the things in our conversation. Just this woman right here is amazing, and I know Michele. In this short amount of time we spent together, I've fallen in love with you too, and so. I will just have to say that my name is Maria Ramos Franklin, and I am a Black woman, and I own my amazing.
Amazing Women Speak is sponsored by the Amazing Woman Network, which was created to unite and empower Black women globally, focusing on our pillars of reclaiming our personal power, mind, body, and spirit, reclaiming our financial power, and increasing our social involvement. You can visit us on the web and register to join at Amazing Woman, WOMAN network.com. Please find Amazing Women Speak on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Spotify. Whatever your favorite platform, like and or subscribe. Turn notifications on, and then take a look at the past episodes. Find the titles that speak to your soul. I promise you, you will find quite a few, and then share them with someone that you know. Be a blessing every single day of your life. Thank you for joining us this evening. We will not be here. Can y'all believe it is the end of 2024?
Right.
Like, I absolutely cannot believe that. Shout out to my baby girl who has officially finished her first semester of grad
Yay.
school. Like, that's
Yes.
so super
Yes.
exciting.
Oh,
I can't wait till she comes back home for the holiday. So we will not be here the next 2 weeks. We will start back up in January. So please, everybody, enjoy your holiday. Be mindful of those who have lost others, especially if it's this first holiday season with those that they have lost. It is a difficult time. So be a blessing and lift up a prayer for those people. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and we will see you in January.